encouraging a little bit more than what you see here, but yesterday was a full house. We know why. Everybody wanted to see Bruce. But he had some great stories to tell that really were. I'm sorry. But look, if you can, you catch it in YouTube. It's quite nice. She said, she's mounting. I told you to make a joint. That's okay. I did. I know you sure as heck did. You sure did. Oh, yes, okay, well, after Easter, I thought you were going to give me just dates that you knew you could do. So, please, Barry, please, just give me the dates for April. And then after you've played whatever your last date is in April, I'll ask you about that, okay? I want your schedule to be.
Y'all ready?
We're ready.
Church, I invite you to hear this call to worship from Psalm 116. The snares of death encompass me. The pangs of Sheol lay hold on me. I suffered distress and anguish. Then I called on the name of the Lord. O Lord, I pray, save my life. Friends, let us worship God. Church, we are so glad that each and every one of you is here with us today as we come together on this Maundy Thursday. Thank you for being here, and also want to welcome those tuning in online as well. We are glad you are here. A few reminders. I hope you'll all stay for lunch following worship today. Today, the men have prepared a cookout feast for you all. So we're looking forward to that. I think some of them are still back there working on that. Also, just a reminder, tomorrow we have a double feature. We'll have our service here at noon, and then at 3 o'clock, our choir and orchestra will be leading us in the Weeping Tree cantata experience. So hope you'll be here for that. Sunday morning, bright and early, our sunrise service, 6:30 a.m. at Wadawi Club Lake. My lovely wife will be preaching there, and we've got some special music as well. I hope you can make it for that. If you need directions, see me, and I'll get you there. Also, our, of course, Easter morning service at 10 a.m., and I believe most Sunday schools are not meeting, but check with your Sunday school teacher about that. Friends, welcome. Our guest speaker today is Reverend Dr. Cameron Trimble. We had the pleasure of hearing you last year, and folks, they said, let's get her back. And so we're glad you're here. Also glad for Mallory and Barry to lead us in our music today. Friends, would you pray with me? Lord, on this day you gather with friends to share a meal, just as we'll do in a short while. And even though a betrayer sat among you, you served your disciples and washed their feet, teaching us that your design for the world rests not on coercive power, but on service. Mold us this day into servants. Amen. I think I did that out of order. I didn't bring a bulletin up here with me, but let us stand and sing our opening hymn, Beneath the Cross of Jesus.
Why would a king decide to leave his throne in heaven? Why would he come so far to save my heart from sin? And how it hurts to know the worst he had to suffer was just because he chose to die for what I did. I owe him everything. I owe him everything. All because he took my place that day at Calvary. His willing sacrifice gave me a brand new life. How could he love me so? I owe him everything. He gives me grace in spite of ways I'm still ungrateful. He gives me mercy though the debt I owe is clear. And day by day I wake to find he's ever grateful. I'll say it now and for the next 10,000 years. I owe him everything. I owe him everything. All because he took my place that day at Calvary. His willing sacrifice gave me a brand new life. How could he love me so? I owe him everything. His willing sacrifice gave me a brand new life. How could he love me so? I owe him everything. Ooh, thank you.
Let's remember it together. It says, just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that his time had come for him to leave the world and go to God. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that God had put all things under his power and that he had come to God and that he would return to God. And so he got up from the meal and he took off his outer clothing. He wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into the basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with the towel that he had wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus said, "You don't realize right now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," Peter said, you should never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "Until I wash you, you have no part with me." "Well then, Lord," this is so typical of Simon Peter, he says, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus said, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. And that's why he said that not everyone was clean. So when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. He said, "Do you understand what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. But now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's. For I've set for you an example, that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth that no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who has sent him. For now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." This is the word of life for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, it is lovely to be back in your presence, particularly on this week. So I want to thank you all for the repeat invitation. I want to thank especially Todd for the risk of inviting me back. He should not be held accountable to anything that comes out of my mouth in the next 10 to 15 minutes. I have to say, though, it feels like 40 years have passed since we were together, doesn't it? I mean, I feel like each day, it's like a 20-year period that's happening in each day. The world is certainly different than the last time that we gathered together. I think that I'm coping okay. I've developed some new habits. Maybe you have too. A couple of weeks ago, I was walking through the den in my house with my dinner plate, and the news was on, and I had the sudden violent urge to throw it at the television set. Thank God it's not just me. Actually, as I'm thinking about this, I recognized that this morning I was having coffee with my golden retriever, and I was talking to her as if she was my therapist. While I'm confessing, I should also tell you that I probably might have had an excessively large bowl of chocolate ice cream last night because I checked my retirement accounts. Yikes, right? So it is good. It is good to be together today, of all days. And if you can relate, then it is good, isn't it, to be in community? Because if anything is true in this time, we are all in this together. We are living in a time where, at least to me, it feels like a whole lot is falling apart. But it's just slowly enough that we still have to do things like the laundry, right? Like, I wish it would just go, Let's just make the hot mess that we seem destined to create. I have weeds I have to pull if we don't do that, and I'd love to be saved from it. But here we are in this Holy Week, which is frankly terrible timing in a sense, Because Jesus chooses this week, this messy, exhausting, chaotic moment in our collective lives, to talk about foot washing of all things. I mean, not how to fix broken global systems, not how to run governments or save economies, or my latest practice, how to win arguments on the internet. No, he decides to sit on the floor, to grab a basin of water, and to start washing feet. I mean, it does feel a little ridiculous when the world is on fire. And if it does, then maybe that's good, because it means we're paying attention. I think that's of the many, many lessons that Jesus teaches us, maybe that's an important one for this moment, that when the world is spinning, that the most radical thing maybe that we can do is to slow down, is to kneel, is to offer someone tenderness that they have neither earned or can repay. It might very well be that when empire tightens its grip on us, that love has to loosen its own, and that's what it means to give oneself away. So before we do that thing we do where we jump to resurrection and we want to skip right through the death part, I think today on this Maundy, Thursday, we sit with the holiness of this moment, this absurd foot-washing moment, because I've now come to understand, as we're living these days together, that what happens in this story on that floor with that towel and these tired feet is in fact the very beginning of a revolution. But in order to kind of get us there, I want to tell you about Susan. So Susan McCullough was a member of the last church that I served. She spent 17 years as an emergency room nurse. She was so good at it. She was one of those people that thrived in crisis situations. She could look at a patient in seconds and immediately diagnose what needed to happen. She was in the chaos in a way like the conductor is in music, you know? She could just flow through it. She was the calmest one in the room, always. She always knew where the trauma scissors were, and she knew the next best step. Like she was that kind of good. Over time, as I watched Susan, I noticed that something began to shift in her. It wasn't like one moment, it was this kind of slow, quiet breaking for her. She said one time to me that she said, I used to feel like I was doing something meaningful, like I was part of healing people, making a difference. And then she paused, and she said, but now I feel like I'm moving people through a machine. Stabilize, discharge, document, repeat. She said, I wash my hands between patients, but it's like I've never actually touched them. I mean, this isn't healing. She says, I've become efficient, fast, but I don't connect. I just feel used. And then she looked down at her hands, I remember, and she said, you know, I feel like I'm a slave to this system, when in truth it's my calling to serve people. I think about her a lot these days, because I think to some extent a lot of us are living in that kind of feeling in one way or another. I mean, we're working as hard as we know how to do. We're trying to make smart decisions. We're trying to be really good humans in this moment. But nothing works like it used to. We're quietly unraveling. We're tired, but not just from the effort. We're exhausted from trying to make meaning from systems in a world that scares the hell out of us. That we're feeling like we're left to either be incredibly angry, at best, maybe, or heartbroken at worst. The poet Frances Weller reminds us that this is called grief. She said, grief is not a feeling. It's a capacity, a capability. It's a faculty that allows us to respond, to be touched by the suffering of the world, and to be moved by it, for without it, we become shut down. And it's in that space, that ache, that fear, that rage, that is ours today, but it was Jesus in his time as well, that Jesus chooses, in the face of that, to kneel. Jesus knew that his hour had come. That's how the gospel begins. He knows that his ending is near, but not just his ending. It's the ending of the story that his friends had been so desperately clinging to. The one where he would come in and conquer the Roman Empire and overthrow this oppressive regime. They would win. But Jesus knows. He knows that betrayal is sitting at that table. He knows that Rome is tightening its grip. He knows that grief is coming upon them. And instead of preaching, instead of performing a miracle, instead of even explaining what he sees that is true among them, he does something so scandalously simple. He kneels. He takes off that outer robe. He fills a basin full of water and he starts washing feet. I used to read that story and think that was such kindness, such sentimental love. But now I've come to realize it's not that at all. It's actually quite revolutionary. Revolutionary love. Dr. Cornel West said that justice is what love looks like in public, but tenderness is what love feels like in private. Jesus brings both to the table. See, mayday, 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 right? I don't know if you've ever had the experience, have you, of having your feet washed? I mean, it's super awkward, right? Like it's intimate, it's vulnerable, it's an engagement that we have with each other where there's nowhere to hide, yeah? And in that kind of loving exchange, there's this love that sees everything and that loves anyway. I mean, isn't that amazing? So then we need to also pause here to realize that it isn't just Peter's feet that Jesus washes, it's Judas's feet too. The man who's going to hand him over, the one who's already made the decision, he's already arranged the silver, he's already chosen betrayal. And Jesus knows this. He sees it in his eyes. He feels it in the tension in the room. He recognizes Judas is not meeting his gaze. But he doesn't skip Judas. He kneels, he pours that water. He holds Judas' feet in his hands, surely feeling the grief of that moment, knowing that he is now offering love that will not be returned. And still he washes his feet anyway. That is not niceness, is it? That is not being polite. That is the revolution of the Christian gospel. Love that does not require loyalty. Love that does not avoid betrayal. Love that refuses to become what it is not, even in the face of violence and oppression. Some time ago, I was talking with a colleague of mine who is a pastor of a small town. She described it reminds me a lot of Wadawi. It's one of those quiet, close-knit communities where you still wave to each other as you're driving down the road. She told me about this member of her congregation. She was a widow. Her husband had passed away, and she couldn't keep up her well anymore. She had let it go on until the water pump broke. But she didn't want to ask for help. She didn't want to be a bother to anybody. And so she stayed quiet. But news traveled, as it does in these small towns. And so one morning, as the sun was rising, there were 3 young men who showed up at her house. One had a toolbox, one had a bucket of biscuits, and another just got out of the car and gave her a great big hug. They didn't ask permission, they just got busy. They cleaned the pipes, they didn't make a fuss, and they didn't ask for thanks. One of the young guys said, "You know, I remember when your husband Jim helped fix our roof." And when they were done, they sat down on her porch and they talked about the birds. That's what love looks like, isn't it? It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's foot-washing kind of love. It's love that remembers that we belong to each other. And in this moment, in this day, that is the kind of love to which Jesus is calling us. Adrienne Marie Brown is an emergence philosopher, and she says, "We are in this time in an imagination battle. What we're imagining is how we will survive together, how we will love, and how we will create in the midst of grand endings." Some years ago, I learned what that kind of love looks like. One of the many weird things about me is that in addition to being a pastor, I'm also a pilot. And for those of us who work in aviation, the musical Come From Away is a uniquely beautiful story for us of kindness, sacrifice, and community. Have any of you seen it? Oh, it's so good. You have to go see that.
Great.
Yeah, isn't it? Right? Oh, it's so good. Yeah, good for you. You go, girl. So it's the story, it's a true story about the American airline pilot, Captain Beverly Bass, and her experience flying an airplane of 158 people from Paris, France, to Dallas, Texas, on September 11th of 2001. It's worth noting, Captain Bass is famous in her own right. She was the third woman ever hired by American Airlines, and then the first woman ever in the history of aviation to make captain at the age of 34. So, go her. On that day, she had a normal takeoff from Paris. She was over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, bound for Dallas, when she heard over the air-to-air radio from another pilot that an airplane had flown into the World Trade Towers. Now, at that point, she and her co-captain assumed that, or co-pilot assumed that it was a small plane, which is terrible. It would have been terrible enough, but it didn't raise alarms for her that she would need to do anything to adjust her own flight. But then, shortly after that, another pilot announced that a second plane had hit the World Trade Center and that it was an American flight in a 737 jet. At that point, she and her co-pilot knew that they would need to plan a diversion. It was a matter of minutes that the New York airspace was shut down, and then a few minutes later, the whole U.S. airspace was brought down. In that, it forced over 4,000 international flights in the air at that moment to have to find another place to land. So the air traffic controllers came on and told her that she should expect to land in a place called Gander, Canada. Now, the airport in Gander was built to service World War II planes. And then afterwards, it rarely saw any traffic. So you could imagine the condition that this little airport had to deal with. In a span of less than 12 hours on September 11th, there were 38 international flights that had almost 7,000 people on board that landed in Gander, Canada. It nearly doubled the size of their entire population. When it became clear that the plane people, as they began to be called, were going to be stranded for a few days, the community sprang to action. They housed people in their own homes. They cooked all of their meals. They took the local hockey rink and converted it into a freezer where they could store lots of food. They set up additional cell phone towers so that people could call home and connect with their families. And they cared for the 19 stranded animals that were on the airplanes that were still sitting on those tarmacs. The people of Gander showed extraordinary hospitality on one of the hardest days in our shared history. Recently, I was talking to a woman who was living in Gander during that experience. She told me that community leaders issued a call to all the citizens there to bring any blankets that they could spare to the overflow shelters to keep people warm. Now, all most people had in their homes were their handmade quilts that they had inherited over generations or had created themselves for future ones. And without hesitation, the people of Gander brought their quilts to keep the plain people warm. 5 days later, on September 16th, the FAA opened up the U.S. airspace, and Captain Bass received word that they were cleared to continue on to Dallas. So as the passengers packed up and prepared to reboard their airplanes, the people of Gander, who had donated those quilts to the plain people, told them to keep them, to take them with them as a remembrance and as a sign of their care. So late in the evening on September 16th, with 158 passengers on Flight 49, they finally made it back to Dallas, Texas. But here's what I love most about this story, is that today, throughout the United States, there are beautifully stitched and lovingly gifted quilts from Canadian sisters and brothers, still keeping people warm. They remind us that in the end, we are held together, stitch by stitch, through sacred and sacrificial love. That's the gospel of foot washing. That's the gospel of, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. It isn't sentimental. It's sacrificial. It's embodied. It's tender enough to kneel. It's brave enough to love Judas. It's soft enough to cry. It's strong enough to love always. It is revolutionary. And so here we land. Not at the end of a story, actually, but at the start of a new call to discipleship. Not called to disciples to be disciples of dominance, of bullying, of certainty, of spectacle, but disciples of the basin, disciples of the towel, disciples of the quilt, disciples of revolutionary, incarnational love. And if that feels small in the face of empire, in the face of fear and despair, then I leave you with the words of the great civil rights elder and mystic Vincent Harding, who said, "I am a citizen of a country that does not yet exist, a country whose name is love." So friends, as we travel through this Holy Week, I hope we go and we build that country together, stitch it together, kneel for it, live for it. Because it is not enough to remember that Jesus just washed feet. We have to become the kind of people that wash feet too. For this is the commandment. This is the revolution. And this is our holy work. May it be so. Amen. Well, you sat through. Thank you. It is a joy to be with you. So now we go and we share a meal together. This is the best part, the highlight of our togetherness. And as we do so, we'll close with these words. Sisters and brothers, our worship has ended, but now our service begins. Go forth from this place, for you are the body of Christ, and so the whole world awaits you. So live passionately, and love faithfully, and celebrate every moment from now until the finale, for the God of relentless grace goes with you.